Hey, welcome back to your Visionary Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Brown, also known as Visionary CJ. And I go by Visionary CJ because I'm very passionate about creating a vision and creating a plan to reach that vision. And I believe that everybody has the ability to become a visionary, but it takes knowing your purpose and it takes knowing yourself. And so that's one of the reasons why I created this podcast. And if you've heard the podcast before, then you know what this podcast is all about. And if you don't, I'll just, tell you now, this podcast is the one and only podcast intentionally designed to push you forward towards the vision you have created for your life. And if you don't have a vision for your life, this is the podcast to help you structure a vision to become the person that God created you to be. And with every episode, my goal is to tell real, authentic, and purposeful stories, not cap, not fake stories, but true stories to help you create a vision for your life and get closer to your purpose, a purpose where you're having a positive impact on those around you and on the world. And this episode that you're about to hear is actually a pre-recorded episode. I released it in 2018 on the podcast, and it's with a guy named Purdeep, and he lives in Canada. He's a business coach, but he started out as a corporate executive, and then he transitioned into entrepreneurship. And he tells a really interesting story about how you have to find your calling and find your tribe. And he just gives some real practical steps on entering entrepreneurship. And I'm actually being intentional about replaying this episode because I'm in a place in my personal life where I'm transitioning from being in corporate, working for a tech company, to going full-time in my own business. And it's a scary leap. It's not easy. It's not easy leaving security for unknown, right? It could be dumb to some people, but it goes back to being a visionary. If you have a vision for your life, and it requires taking a leap of faith, and that's what you have to do. So with this episode, I want to inspire you to listen deeply, take notes, and find ways to incorporate what you learn into your personal life. And at the end of this episode, I share 3 takeaways. And these takeaways will be from 2018, but I'm sure they still hold true today. And so enjoy what you hear today, and be sure to share it with a friend, a family member, or an associate. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and love. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Your Visionary Podcast. Today we have a special episode. We have the founder of the Male Entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster. We have Purdeep. How are you doing, man?
Hey, Christian. Good. I'm doing awesome, man.
Awesome. And first, I just want to thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man, but I really appreciate you taking the time to connect with me.
Hey, I appreciate being part of this, and I definitely love being able to work with someone like you. I see your passion, man, and it's contagious.
Awesome, bro. I love it. And so how we start this off, man, we always ask, what is your purpose statement and why?
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty simple. My purpose statement is to make the world a better place. So, I know some companies, some businesses like to make it complicated, but I keep it as simple as possible. And that literally just came from when I was a kid. I always wanted to see people happy. I wanted to see people have the basic necessities in life. Mm-hmm. And I still remember those moments when I was a kid, when we used to have some neighbors who were Jehovah's, and they would come over and drop off a pamphlet. And then on the top cover, they would always show animals, people, just like a perfect harmony of life.
Yeah.
And that still resonates with me today. So, it's really all we can do here. We're put on this earth for a reason. And I think it's one of them for everybody should be to help someone else.
Yeah, man, I agree. And I think the quicker people realize that, the better themselves and other people will be, definitely. And so just take us through your story as to why you got into, how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. So where do I start, man? Well, the first thing is I grew up so I'm from Canada, and I grew up in a small town called Kelowna, British Columbia. And I grew up part of an immigrant family. My parents came here from India. And I was born here, and my parents literally, they didn't know much in terms of the language and any skills or education. So they started working on an orchard. And from there, they bought their own orchard. And I was literally raised on an orchard as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes my parents, as kids, as babies, put us in an apple bin while they'd be paying.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I learned the importance of work ethic, of appreciating things in life, the small things, especially of nature.
Yeah.
And what it takes to run a successful business, how you treat your employees, how you have pride in the work that you do.
Yeah.
And I learned that from my parents. And from there, what I would say is I literally just became fascinated with how do you run a successful business. Yeah. The interesting is my parents kind of pushed me down a different path. They wanted me to go down the academic path. So I went in and they wanted me to be a doctor. I went in, but that wasn't my passion. So I kind of switched in. I've done chemistry, I've done like business, I've done innovation, and I fell into the corporate world for 14 years and I was a successful executive. And one day I just walked into work and I wasn't happy. Like I was making great money. I had a killer career, a career path.
Yeah.
But something inside of me, like I didn't have that fire anymore.
Mm.
And that passion and that drive. And I literally just walked into work one day and I quit.
Wow.
Yeah. And everybody looked at me like, and even my family to this day, they're just like, you looked kind of crazy when you did that.
Yeah.
So from there, my passion, I have obviously a business background. That's my expertise. My goal when I was in the corporate world was to be a CEO of a major corporation in Canada. And I was well on my path to get there. So I have a strong expertise in business. And what I found was a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
And I would help them from that aspect. And that kind of morphed into a number of things. I've always been a big believer since I was like 19 years old, really into personal development, psychology. How do you perform at your highest level? How do you be happy? And I realized that not everybody did that. Not everybody has the skills or the knowledge.
Yeah.
Or the interest that I had in that. And as I was coaching people, I was helping them in their personal life as well. Mm-hmm. So it became helping them in the business and then helping them live happier lives. And it just kind of morphed. Long story short, I'm helping guys now, particularly the male entrepreneur, because guys face a big challenge because they're thought of as the man of the household. They're thought of as a pillar. And running a successful business and a happy family can be tough.
Yeah.
And so there's that pressure. Everybody thinks, it's easy to be a guy. But when you're married, when you have kids and you have a wife and you have all the expectations, it's not that easy. But here's the thing, guys don't like to talk about it, right? We like to be macho. We like to say, hey, look, we got this all under control. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, every male entrepreneur that I work with, from guys that make $1 million to guys that make $40-50 million, they all have the same challenges.
Yeah, I believe it. And I think we, like now, especially in society these days, we lack transparency. We lack being authentic. And so we don't want to, share with our struggles, like what we're going through. But at the end of the day, like you said, everybody has them, no matter what scale you're on, you all struggle. You always, struggle with something, which I find that interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And rest assured for you listening, for those of you listening, that if you feel a certain way, I can bet you anything, there's someone out there making $100 million, even $1 billion that feels the exact same way. So you're not the only one out there.
Yeah, right. And I think most of my listeners are, college age students. And so right now we're at a position of our life where we're trying to figure out which direction to go in, and so, many of my peers, they're scared to talk about that. They're scared to talk about not knowing, they're rather just hide instead of expressing that they're trying to figure everything out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I always try to encourage my listeners to reach out to other people, network, because there's always somebody that's going through the same struggles you're going through, no matter what it is. Right. And so in terms of being an entrepreneur, would you say that you always had like an entrepreneur bone in your body?
You know what? I did. Yes. I always have. There's, I would say, different degrees of entrepreneurism. There's guys that like a ton of risk that are out there, the deal makers, they're the shakers. Yeah. I would say that's a different level of entrepreneurism. Mine is really to see, have a successful business. I'm not out there to have 15 companies and sell them and continue to go different ones. So yes, I did, but I also had a different background where it was more here's what I share with entrepreneurs. Right? You can become an entrepreneur and not really have an entrepreneurial mindset. And sometimes you get yourself in trouble. So a lot of entrepreneurs get into business because they're creative. They have a skill or they have an idea and they just fall into it. But when it comes down to running a business and growing that business, they don't have that skill. So to answer your question, long story short, yes, I had that, but I also had to learn a lot of it. Yeah. And I also realized that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to partner with people that have the skills that you don't. Wow. So if you're listening and if you're creative, but you're saying, I don't know anything about numbers or making a deal or that kind of stuff, well, you can learn it or you can partner with someone.
Yeah, that's amazing. You hit an interesting point there. You said anybody can be an entrepreneur, but not everyone has the entrepreneurial mindset. Can you explain what that entrepreneurial mindset is?
Yeah, the entrepreneurial mindset, I would say specifically, I want to make this very clear. Just because you don't have the mindset doesn't mean you can't be a successful entrepreneur. The entrepreneurial mindset is that mindset where they are the movers and the shakers. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that like to, take risks to make the deals, right? They're the ones that I was telling you that naturally think, how much money can I make from this based on this type of a deal? I can tell you right now, being an entrepreneur, my type of personality as an entrepreneur, I have a tough time thinking about making money because I'm about serving people. Yeah. So the first thing that pops into my mind is not how much money I can make, what kind of deal I can make, but how do I help this person?
Yeah, and it's crazy. I feel like I'm the same way, like the money isn't always at the top of my mind. I'm thinking, how can I impact? Because like my purpose statement is I help people find happiness in their struggle. And so like you said, everyone struggles. My goal is to find, help people find the happiness throughout that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like there is happiness in every struggle. And so we kind of relate in that, I always try to help, but I know at the end of the day, it is a business. So I have to, figure out how can I help, but still turn them into customers at the same time.
Yeah, you know what? Someone like you, it doesn't sound like you're in that mentality, but this is something I learned a while ago. So obviously what I do is business coaching and mentorship and stuff like that. And I was at that time savvy enough to know that I needed mentorship in certain areas. And one of my first mentors said, hey, look, Purdeep, you have a social worker's mentality. You just want to help everybody and not care about the money. But that's not going to help anybody at the end of the day. And that took me a while for it to sink in.
Yeah.
And then I realized, the more I charge, right? I charge a premium now, the more I'm able to not only donate, but, be available to do other things, but I can just help more people. I can scale better. I can scale my business.
Yeah. How did you really break that barrier? Because I know because like you said, it took you a while to really process that. How do you break that barrier between, okay, I want to help these people, but at the end of the day, it is a business. So I have to figure out how I can charge them and feel okay with it or do it so we're not pushy with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Kirsten. So that's what I work with a lot of entrepreneurs on is what I call part of being the male entrepreneur is about what I call the masculine mindfulness, which is about being within your masculine, your thought, your pattern, who you are naturally, but also being mindful. And a lot of people aren't mindful of their emotions and mindful of how their emotions direct them. So there's a reason why people sometimes think money is bad or they want to work for free and help people because it's fulfilling a specific emotion within them. And what I do is I help them identify what those emotions are because sometimes those emotions were created when they were a kid or they watched a movie or something where it's told them that you have to work or help people for free. Well, that's not the case. There's a lot of rich people that do a lot of great work and charge a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's all based on perception and beliefs.
Yeah. Beliefs. Yeah. You had a big one there. Beliefs. And looking at your background, I see you have a large bookshelf, 2 bookshelves there. What are some books that you've read to really help you take on the entrepreneurial mindset you have, thus far and just give you some of that crucial knowledge that you use every day?
Yeah, interesting. So I would say there's 2 types of books, right? There's the books that are kind of technical out there. The books that really have made a difference for me are the ones that really broke me out of my, what, people call mindset, which is, I'm really passionate about The War of Art. That's a really good one. And, I won't spoil it for people, but it talks about if you're feeling resistance to do something, there's a reason for it. And, it's a really cool book. I would encourage anybody that has an artistic bone in their body to really read that one. There is Scoville Shin's book on the complete works of Scoville Shin. This is a really good one. It's about spirituality. The Think and Grow Rich is obviously a classic one. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's really classic one as well. There's so many I could mention, but my all-time favorite right now at this point is probably The War of Art.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that book, but I consider myself an artist, as well as an entrepreneur. So I definitely need to check that book out. I'm going to get on it as soon as we.
Well, I can break it down to the fundamental premise of what it talks about.
Yeah.
Is it's not about competition with other people. It's about finding your territory. What is it that you are an expert at or want to be an expert at, and owning that and being passionate about it, and not giving into what the author calls resistance. Because everything that we want in life that we are working so hard for, there's always some kind of resistance. And if you're feeling resistance, it's a good thing. It means that you're going down the right path.
Yeah.
So it just talks about that. It was a huge eye-opener for me. Just so I can obviously share, just add on to my story there, is because I was struggling there for a bit, because I've always grown up being the best at what I do.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to own a category where I was the best, but I'm like, what category do I own? And it took me forever, but because I just kept putting myself in other people's categories. And I think people do this. People do this in school as well, in college, right? They're always competing with grades, or, who's a top kid in this class, or, who's going to be the top graduate.
Yeah, especially with social media these days. It's a huge platform for people to just compare and other people's highlights. Right.
It's like a disease, man. It's like,
oh my gosh, it is. It's like, I know as an entrepreneur, it's kind of tough. Well, I speak for myself, for me, because it's like trying to use social media for my business, but still stay away from distractions at the same time. And so that's one thing that I'm focusing on right now. Is just like, how can I, optimize social media instead of using it as a distraction?
Yeah. And a lot of people face that, especially in your industry, people that obviously use digital marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I always believe that awareness is the first step, in overcoming anything. Like once you're aware of it, then it's the first step of overcoming it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That is definitely the first step.
Right. And with the world of art, you hit on something interesting there. I was, I guess, kind of coaching a college student of mine who is trying to be an entrepreneur. He's actually a freshman in college. And I was just telling him about, online business and how to create a Shopify store. And then his mindset on it was like, well, yeah, I can do that, but can everyone do that? And I'm like, yeah, but anyone can do anything at the same time. So I'm like, it was hard to really come back with that, because I'm like, you have to change your perception on how you think about it.
Yeah,
I find it interesting how you say you have to find your unique category.
Yeah,
and so you have some steps to really find that that uniqueness that only you can give the world.
Well, you know what? I'm going to jump on a whim here, because, this is my belief, not that everybody needs to believe this or should believe this, but I believe that everybody's put on this earth for a reason and has a specific talent. And how big or small that talent is, you have a talent that no one else has. You just need to discover it. And you may even know what it is, but not be confident in feeling that it is a talent. And because there's other people that you feel, this is a big one that I come across with entrepreneurs. And I felt this way myself. Well, I'm not good enough because so-and-so or that person can do it better than me, or I perceive them to be able to do it better than me. Because let's just say if I'm starting off a business, they already have a business that's making a few $1 million. Well, that's tough for me to have confidence in, right? It's like, who am I coming into this person's territory or this business's territory? And what value am I going to add to the clients or customers that's going to be better than them? But there is. Everybody has a unique talent. How you find it is, you look within. I'm a big spiritual person. I'm a big believer in meditating. Some people pray, but meditation is a big one for me. That's how I found the male entrepreneur and what I call the masculine mindfulness, because that's two sides of who I am. Is the mindfulness, right? Mastering emotions. but on the masculine side, because I'm very much about being a strong husband, father, man figure in society, because, we're seeing a lot of it with a lot of the politics that's happening right now. What happens when you have crappy leadership in men? Well, it impacts all of society.
Yeah.
So I would just say, search, test it out. Don't be afraid. Don't, it's not set in stone. I've sold off 2 arms of my business. This is my 3rd arm, the male entrepreneur, and that I've kind of narrowed down and have finally felt that, wow, this is what I was meant to do.
Really? Oh, I bet that feeling is amazing once you really realize, like, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, but this is really it. I feel it in my heart. Right?
Yeah, you know what it is. And when people talk about flow and creativity, I did innovation. That's my background. I did my MBA and I've gone to some schools for that. And when you get into the flow, what I call the mental spiritual flow, and I had this happen to me last night. I was up at 1:00 in the morning and I couldn't go back to sleep.
Wow.
And my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I had all of these thoughts flowing through my brain that I was literally just making notes. Wow. And I was tired to such a point that I was like, I need to go to sleep. I just stop. But it wouldn't stop coming. I'm telling you, when you're in that direction, this is another premise. And I apologize if I'm going on a sidetrack here, but this is what, I really teach and it works for people. Mm-hmm. Is that when you're, we talked about resistance on one hand, but there's a point in time when you get, whether it's in your business or your personal life, where things just fall together naturally, where you break past the resistance and things just start to flow. Yeah. And just in your heart and your mind and your spirit, that things are going down the right path. You have that faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so real. But and I try to express that to my listeners. There is a certain flow that life is supposed to have, and it's like when you have these bad habits, they get you out of that flow. Whether it's even social media, if you're flowing, even scrolling through social media, that takes you off flow. But it's just really, really becoming aware of that flow starts with finding your passion. And that's really, it's kind of tough. Like for me, I found out that my gift was writing. Right. And I've known for so long, like even when I was a kid, my mom would read some papers that I turned in for class. She was like, "You wrote this? This is really good." But I played basketball. And so my mindset was like, "Oh yeah, I want to be in the NBA. I want to go to college, play basketball." And I really just had to, like you said, meditate. Like I went on a period, a year, I took off from school and I just went traveling. It was really like a spiritual journey for me. And through that time, I was writing, so much, and it became something that I loved. Right. And from there, I ended up publishing 2 poetry books, and I have one book coming out. I have one book coming out this month. It's called The Positive Affirmation Guide. And so I'm super excited about that because it's all about just speaking things into existence, using your voice, right? Just saying those positive affirmations, whether it's even in meditation, just saying those positive affirmations out loud and figuring out like why you're here, like your purpose, because that's what it's about, right? We're all here for a reason,
Yeah, exactly. And just to, a lot of people make life a little bit way too tough.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, life is too short. You just got to live it and be, rather than trying to. A lot of people, this is something that I learned, is a lot of people are so focused on doing, but they forget to be.
Wow. Yeah. That's so powerful. And I was reading, cause I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle. And so I think it was the book, A New Earth. And he was saying, like, a lot of people, they try to say I am and put something on the end of that. Like, I am an entrepreneur, I am a doctor, instead of just saying I am and leave it at that. Like, like I am.
Yeah. Just simple, right?
Yeah, it's so simple. But like you said, people do try to make it tough. But
well, you know what? We're on the same page here. I do blame a lot of social media technology today. I'm a huge believer in technology. I think AI is great. Machine learning is great. But I think in the other aspects, because I was walking downtown a few weeks ago in Toronto, and I was looking at everybody. I was like, what the heck's going on? 99% of the people were on their cell phones, even when they were a group of people just sitting together. And I was just like, this is not society. No wonder people are getting anxiety, stressed out, trying to compare themselves, don't feel like they're enough.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I totally agree with that, man. It's really crazy. And so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, did you envision yourself being who you are today with the Male Entrepreneur?
No.
No.
You know, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have.
Really?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind then when maybe like 5 years ago?
Well, I was at that time, 5 years ago, I was still in the corporate world. I was I would say stuck in the rat race.
Wow.
You know, I was, you know, again, I was making great money. I was a successful executive, but I wasn't happy. It was impacting me. I was just I was living to like a beat of someone else's tune.
Yeah.
I had my hands in someone else's, or my destiny in someone else's hands. And I honestly did not thought, although it was inside of me, I always wanted to, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur myself and have a business. My parents continued to have a business. Yeah. But it's just, one day I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, you know what? Enough is enough.
Yeah. And I think a lot of college students, they have, they kind of have dreams of being an entrepreneur or just owning a business, but they have the mindset. It's like, okay, I can't do it right now. I have to get my degree, get a job, just go through that. Like what advice would you give to them to break out of that limiting belief mindset?
Well, I would say do it while you're young, because here's the thing. I had 2 kids, right? 2 young kids. And my wife, who's got some pretty high standards. And, you know, to not take a paycheck, to go cold turkey and say, I basically I burned all bridges, cut off all ties. And I said, I'm going to do this. If I can do it, anybody can do it. That's the thing. You want to do it while you're younger. You know, who knows? It might not be your time. It might not be your path at this moment to start your own business. Even if you get a job or a career and it's 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, deep down, when you have that itch, you have that urge, take it, because you never know, right? You never know. When your time is up. You know, my father passed away a couple of months ago. So I know that feeling. I'm living that feeling in terms of life is too short. Mm-hmm. You have to take those. And here's a quick stat for the people that are listening. You know, in the US, you can start a business within less than a week. In other countries, sometimes it takes 6 months. So you are very fortunate. I'm very fortunate living in Canada, but you guys are even more progressive when it comes to entrepreneurship in the US.
Yeah.
You are living in the country that promotes entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. Take advantage of it. Yeah.
And especially in like where I am, I'm at my university, Kennesaw State University, but we're 20 minutes away from Atlanta. And Atlanta right now is one of the, you know, the thriving entrepreneurial scenes in the US. Right. But people don't really take advantage of it. And I think it could be because of that limiting belief or just a fear to embrace risk taking. And so how did you learn to embrace risk taking?
Well, risk taking is really, if we take a look at it, business is, you know, 3/4 is emotional. It's what I call the mindfulness, right? The other quarter is just tactics. So 25% is business tactics and strategy and stuff like that. 3/4, 75% is how you manage your emotions. Mm. So if you can learn to manage your emotions, you can learn how to be a better business person and actually start your own business. So how would I suggest you do that? You know, I have a process that I take people through, but I would say sit down and really identify, what kind of life you want. Mm. And if you can put that in writing, and then write down all the fears as to what you think is holding you back, and really sit back and say, are these really true?
Wow.
Right? There's a saying out there, you know, like, what is it? A warrior dies but one death. I don't know exactly what it is, but a coward dies 1,000 times. Hmm. Right? Because every time we worry, we end up slaying ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than biting the bullet and saying, I'm going to do this. If one day it fails, whatever, that time will come. But if I'm going to sit here and worry about it, I'm doing that every single day and every single moment. That's 10 times worse.
Right. It takes 10 times as much time too if you're doing it every day, because there's no progress. You know, even with the failing, like you learn from that failure and you're actually taking action steps to you know, try to reach a goal. But it's like once you fail, you learn. You know, as like not doing anything, you don't learn anything except how to worry more.
No, if we take a look at spirituality and science, so I have a science background, right? That's what I did in university. I'm not, a big foo-foo person. But I'm big into spirituality because science has proven that there's more out there in the universe than we think. And what we think in terms of our thoughts attracts the things in our life. So when people are thinking about fearful thoughts, that's what they continue to attract. It's proven by science. It's proven by science that what you think, you set off a certain frequency, a wavelength into the universe, and that attracts matter that is similar to that frequency. So if you're throwing out fear there all the time, that's what you're getting back.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think I was listening to, I don't know what I was listening to, but it was a story of an old man. He was walking down the street and he saw like a huge German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd was just growling and he was fearful. And so he was like, I can't do it. I can't go. He walked the other way. And there was a little girl licking a lollipop going down the same street. And when the dog came up to her, he just started licking her, right? Yeah. You can tell that fear. Like when you give off that fear, it's kind of contagious, but it's energetic, like everything around you can feel that as well. Whether if you're just calm and comfortable, you feel that as well. And you get comfortable, also, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I find it's wild. But another question for you: what's the most important thing you've learned about leadership, and how has it been proven invaluable?
Wow, when it comes to leadership, there's so many things. The simplest thing, you may have heard this 10 times, but really walking the talk.
Yeah,
being authentic, walking the talk, because you. As an entrepreneur, and this is just my philosophy, but every time you make a business deal, every time you hire an employee, every time you fire an employee, or you get a new client or your new customer, you're dealing with people. And as a leader, you need to be able to relate to people. And so having that ability to understand people's emotions. So if you're more caring, your staff are going to be more caring, and they're going to care about your clients more. But if you're telling your clients or your staff to give the best service to your clients, yet I'm just going to say an a-hole, it's not going to work, right? People model your behavior. And this is something as a parent, I've learned very, and I have to be very conscious because we're human, right? I make mistakes. I say things sometimes that I shouldn't say around my kids. But here's the fact, your kids, basically, by the time they're 8 years old, you've basically shaped their being, how they make decisions, who they are for the rest of their life, unless they decide to change otherwise, unless they're aware. Yeah. So be conscious of how you act around people, especially children, because as a leader, you have an influence. You have an influence on people.
Yeah. And one quote that I say almost every day, I say, be the change you want to see. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta live myself. I have to be the change that I want to see. Like right now, I want to see less people on social media, less people trolling on social media. And so it's like with me, I can't be doing that, because I want to be that change. I don't want to be in a public place and just be on my phone. Like sometimes I have to just embrace that awkwardness, because it is kind of awkward, when you're on your phone in public, everyone else is on their phone, and you're just like looking at what do I do, right? But it's just like that's a change I want to see. So I have to really be that. Right.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like being the sober person in a drunk party, right? I've had that time when I was younger, when I was just like, I'm just going to quit drinking for a year. I'm not going to drink. And man, that was the oddest time, because being around all my drunk friends, I was like, what the heck is this? It's like Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it's awkward. It's awkward, but you just have to embrace that. And so we talked a lot about entrepreneurship. And one main aspect of entrepreneurship, I believe, is failure. Right. So can you talk about like a business setback that you've had and how you've overcame it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say within the first couple of years, things were going good, but I would say one of the setbacks was finding my unique value proposition, because I pride myself, and going through my path, I basically got so much knowledge about business and so many different aspects that I didn't know how to present to someone, hey, look, this is my expertise, because I just knew a lot about marketing, sales, operations, building high performance teams, that it took me a while. And I just, for literally a year and a half, 2 years, I struggled. And I probably could have tripled my revenues.
Wow.
And how I overcame that was I literally just said, you know what, I need to do something different. And just made that leap of faith, made that step. And as soon as I made that step and put it out there, again, part of the universe, when you put an intention out there, a thought out there, it has a funny way of throwing it back at you.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. And it's crazy. Like everything, it seems like it always comes back to that emotion, the energy you put out there, the affirmations, right? Like what you put out is what you get back. And so, I think that's very powerful. And I want you to give some advice to college students, right, who are struggling with, how do I want to say it? Struggling with managing their emotions. Mm-hmm. All the things going on, just trying to balance everything, all the expectations you set for yourself, the uncertainties. How do you really just embrace your emotions and manage that?
Yeah, the first thing, like as you mentioned, is awareness. And people have to understand that they are 100% in control of their emotions. And I know a lot of people don't think that. Even when they say it, they don't think that, but you are. And Shakespeare said it the best. There's no such thing. Well, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but there is neither good nor bad, but thinking that makes it so. Right. And it's so true. If you take a look at how to control it is just, or how to deal with your emotions is to know that you have complete control. And here's one thing that changed my life forever. It is have 100% accountability for your emotions and your situation. Wow. When you have 100% accountability, you are not giving control to anybody else. What most people do is say, yeah, you know what, maybe 50% of it is my fault, 50% is the other person's fault or the situation. Or some people are even a little bit more generous and they say, okay, I'll take 90%, but 10% is still the other person's fault. Yeah. Anytime you give even 1% of accountability to someone else, you just lost control. You just lost control of your emotions. Wow. And degree of control, and it's been proven through research projects, is that the more you believe you are in control of a situation, the better your performance will be and the better your outcomes. Wow. Yeah. That is so powerful. And I agree with that 100%. And so we're getting to the end of this interview, and I want to ask you one more question. Before I get to the question, my listeners always ask me, like, how do you find these guests? How do you find these guests? And so I wanted to share how I met you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so we met on LinkedIn. We connected on LinkedIn, and I was reading your bio, founder of Maryland Entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster. And I reached out to you. I was like, hey, I'm a podcaster too. Like, I would love to connect with you. And then you responded back like, sure, let's do it. And so we set up a time to talk. We had maybe like a 20-minute conversation on the phone. You gave me some great tips. I told you what I was struggling with, which is getting up earlier and just fixing my morning routine. You gave me some great advice, and I really appreciated it. But my pleasure. Yeah, but I just made you from reaching out on LinkedIn and just putting out that positive energy, and that's what you gave me back. And so, just to my listeners, I didn't know you maybe like a month ago, but we met. We connected, we clicked, and now here it is. Yeah. Put it out there. Positive intentions, right? Right. Just put it out there. And so, and this last question is, if you can give any advice to your 21-year-old self, what would it be and why? To my 21-year-old self. Yeah. I would say have more belief in myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's what I would say. Yeah, why is that? Even though I was fairly confident at that time, I don't think there's a difference between confidence and faith and belief, I think. Mm. Sometimes you just have to have faith, knowing that you may not have the skill, you may not have the talent or the ability, but you can make it happen. Yeah. And that for me, I think would have been the best thing, because even at that time, I was great at many things, but I still didn't live to my potential just because I didn't believe in myself.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And and another part would I would say is, this is the biggest thing, is always compete against myself. And I was fairly good at that, but I was at that time, I got a little bit consumed with competing against others.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell myself, is just focus on, finding my own niche, finding my own territory, and not focusing on what anybody else is doing.
Awesome, man. Great, Ryan. I thank you again for sharing your time with me. This has been a fun episode. I know, everyone's going to enjoy it, going to love it. A lot of valuable things you said, and I appreciate it again.
Yeah, awesome. My pleasure. And again, I'm truly pleasured by being part of your show there, Christian.
Yeah, no doubt. And can you tell all my listeners how they can find you? How can they find out about the Male Entrepreneur? How can they, find you on the internet, social media, anything?
Yeah, so most of the social media profiles, it's the Male Entrepreneur. The website is actually just being reconstructed right now, themaleentrepreneur.com. You can also go to purdeepsangha.com. And I have a podcast of my own, which is the Male Entrepreneur. So you can find me there as well.
Awesome, man. Great. All right. It was fun talking to you, man. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
And so this part of the episode is what I call the Visionary Minute, where I go over 5 crucial things that stuck out to me throughout the episode. And the first thing I want to hit on is, he said, to be a successful entrepreneur, you must partner with people who know what you don't. And so I thought that was super important, because there are always people who specialize in what you don't specialize in, and vice versa. And number 2, entrepreneurs are the movers and the shakers, and they're the ones that take risks and make deals. And I've heard this so many times. You have to take risks in order to be a successful entrepreneur. And number 3, he believes that everyone is here for a reason, and everyone has their own unique talent. And I believe the same thing. I believe we all have a special gift that no one else has except for us. And we just have to figure out how to identify that. That's one of the purposes of this podcast and why I do what I do. And number 4, he said bad habits get you out of your flow, and even scrolling through social media gets you out of flow. And I believe that we are creatures of habit. I believe that life should flow. And when we do things that take us out of that flow, kind of sets us back. And I see that in my own life. And number 5, he said the most important leadership lesson he's learned was the simple thing, to walk the talk and be authentic. And that's self-explanatory. I think being transparent is super important, especially today, when a lot of people are just faking. It's important to be yourself, be real. You know what I'm saying? People will be able to relate to that. There it is, the vision.